Dean, could you please tell me your first and last name and where and when you were born?
Dean E. Campbell, born in 1926, December 2nd,
In what town?
in Villa Grove, Illinois. It's south of Champaign, about 45 miles.
Okay. And what was it like growing up in Illinois?
I didn't grow up in Illinois. We lived on a farm until I was 4.
Okay.
It was 1930. We moved off because of the Depression. It got us, wiped us out. My dad lost his job at a railroad, and we had to move off the farm. It was sold. And we moved to Fort Dodge, Iowa. And I grew up there.
What was in Fort Dodge that brought you here to Iowa?
My dad's relatives were here, his mother and his brothers. And so when we came here, we knew people, not many, but our relatives.
So did your whole family live together then?
We lived with my uncle and my Aunt Faye Nibachek until we were here 6 months. We got relief from the county, and we lived there on 25th Street in Fort Dodge.
Okay. What was it like? Do you have any memories of your childhood of what the world was like during the Great Depression?
Yes, everybody was not doing very well. Somewhere they were employed, but we weren't making any good money. And there were a lot of unemployed people, and we were all happy when Roosevelt won the election and got in there. They had WPA work in the parks and roads and places, and that's what the men worked at. It was just a subsistence living. We had the basic necessities, and that's about it. Nobody. It's kind of like that today for a lot of people. And so that's what it was like when I grew up. I still have a lot of horses. Did a lot of the farm work and with horses, and I had a friend that lived on a farm right on the edge of town, and we grew up pretty much together. And I had other friends in town that it was a Czechoslovakian and Italian neighborhood predominantly. So I had those boys for friends. We ran around together, and we had a good time.
Now, you said you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor happened. Can you tell me that story?
Yes. We had a storekeeper, Dino Castagnoli, and he had some vacant lots behind the store. And we were over there gagged up. I don't know what we were doing, but a lot of us there. And somebody showed up and said that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, one of the boys in the neighborhood. And we thought, oh boy, we'll really give them a business. And it turned out that they had sank a lot of our ships there, battleships and others. And it was a terrible defeat for us. And I had been planning on joining the Navy when I was old enough because my father was in the Navy in World War I. And he had me, he talked about the Navy like it was something great. And he didn't see any war. The war is the bad part. Otherwise, the Navy was pretty good, but I was so hurt by that Japanese attack that I swore that I'd get even with them. And so did everybody else. I wasn't alone. Us younger boys couldn't wait to get in there.
Oh, you can even leave it there.
Oh, Well, drape it over here. Drape it over the arm, and I'll hold it.
Yeah.
I could.
It's just plastic. It's just fine.
Well, it will. I think stay here. And we just hang it up.
There you go.
Anyway, that was about the story of Pearl Harbor at me. And it was a couple of years before I could join. And I was in school, and we continued to go to school. Until I got about in the 10th grade, I left school and went to work. And it was the first time in my life I had any money, you know. I had new clothes. And so I liked to work anyway. And my friend who lived on the farm, he moved off the farm for the same reason we did. His father got old, and they had to move off. But anyway, we joined the Navy together.
And when was that?
It was August 1943. We got sworn in on August the 1st in Des Moines in the old Federal Building. And we had taken the interurban from Fort Dodge down here. And so that was my beginning in the Navy.
Okay. So you and your friend enlisted in the Navy. Did you leave right away then?
Well, when we got sworn in, we got on the Rock Island to Minneapolis, and then the Great Northern out to Farragut, Idaho. And we went to boot camp there. We got a couple of weeks leave, went back to Fort Dodge and spent our leave. And when we got back to Farragut, my buddy got put in a gymnasium to spend the night. They had to sling their hammocks. And I got put in a barracks. I don't remember the number now, but in the morning, when I get up, I went over to the gymnasium to find him. He'd shipped out during the night for the West Coast. And I didn't see him again till after the war in 45 when I came home for Christmas.
Really?
He was home. So that was...
So then you were in the barracks. Then when did you actually ship to your training?
Well, I was there about a week in the barracks. And I worked in the mess hall during the day. I just had to serve food, is all. And in about a week, my name was on the board that I was going to Great Lakes to the Torpedoman school. And I told where to meet at the train depot. And I don't remember how I got there, if I walked or what. But anyway, I was there. And there was another fellow there that came over and started talking. His name was Duffy. He was from Minneapolis. And he was a real sociable, friendly fellow. We made friends, and so we went to the Torpedoman school together in Great Lakes. And he was a good friend the whole time, except he got pneumonia, had to drop out of our class. He was in the hospital. And but I'd made other friends by that time. There was one boy from Kansas, Hayward Williams, was from Topeka, and another boy was from St. Louis, Missouri. His name was Cochran, and we remained friends the whole time until we got through submarine school, where I went after torpedo school in New London, Connecticut.
What kind of things did you learn at torpedo school?
I learned all the working parts in the torpedo, which I think they said there were over 5,000 parts. It's a very complicated little device. But so we studied each part separately until we had studied the entire torpedo, including the exploder mechanism and the warhead, practice heads too. And by the time we got through there, we were pretty well versed in the workings of the torpedo.
Would you be able to explain, if it was a middle schooler that might not know what a torpedo is, could you explain what a torpedo does?
Oh, yes.
Okay. What does a torpedo do?
Well, when you fire it from the tubes, it rolls forward with 5 pounds of compressed air behind it, which it tapers down like that, where the propellers are. It pushes forward, and it has a trigger sticking up and a stop button that lowers, and it pushes by that, and it trips the trigger and opens the air flask. There's 3,000 pounds of square inch air pressure in there, and it immediately makes all the parts work. An igniter fires in a combustion pot, heats alcohol, so it's extremely hot, and it goes through there and heats the air so it expands enormously and blows on 2 turbines. One turns one way and one turns the other way to keep the torpedo upright and won't roll over. And it also goes to from not only the turbines but to all the working parts in the torpedo. We have steering engine, depth engine, a gyro gets the blast of that air and spins at thousands of RPMs per minute, and that steers the torpedo. It is set by some spindles that direct the pot towards a certain destination, wherever that ship is that you're going to plan on hitting. And it has to meet that ship at that point, and the captain and his officers figure out that. But the computer is a great aid to them since they got computers. And captain turns the periscope, and the computer is wired there some way. It sets the spindles in the torpedo room in the pot to tell that gyro which way to point.
Did you guys have computers on the ship back then?
Pardon?
Did you have the computers on the ship in the 40s?
Had it on when I was on there.
You had a computer?
I went aboard in 1943, and we had a computer on there. Yeah, that was the first I'd ever heard of a computer, but we had it, and it worked a lot of the fire control problems.
What kind of torpedoes did you guys have?
I forget what they called that now. It was M something.
All right, let's talk a little bit about submarine school, because those are separate, right?
Okay.
So what kind of things did you do at submarine school?
We studied all the design of the submarine, all the fixtures in it. We didn't study the computer. That was the top secret at the time. We didn't even know about it. I never heard of it. But we had the main engines, the main motors, and basically we found out just how that submarine worked. The trimming system of tanks of water to balance it like a teeter-totter when you're submerged. The ballast tanks that we flooded, and the vents, of course, to let the air out when you flood the tanks. bow and stern planes, and the screws, of course, the propellers they call them. They're called screws. They are screw propellers. Is a screw. Anyway, all the parts of a submarine we had to, and the system we had to study all. We draw them too, commit to memory.
Did you get to decide that you wanted to be in a submarine, or did the Navy tell you?
No, it's all volunteer.
So how did you decide?
Well, I was in Torpedoman school. When we graduated, there was a young fella that I had made friends with, Dwayne Board. He was from near Cleveland, Ohio, on a farm. And some others, they were volunteering for submarines. Told me how to get double pay and all this and that. All or nothing, you're not going to survive. If you get hit, you're out of here. But anyway, I didn't think I'd get it, because a doctor at a boot camp, I'd volunteered in there, and my nose had been broken, a little bones on the end of it. He said I couldn't breathe properly. He flunked me out. So I went ahead and volunteered. I thought I wouldn't get it anyway. Started going, if I didn't get it, they didn't even give me a physical. Just sent me out there, and oh God, I thought, oh mercy, you know. I went ahead and did it, but we got out there, it wasn't so bad. It was just going to school. And after we graduated from submarine school, we went into an outgoing unit. Others went to new construction and wherever they volunteered to go. And I had volunteered to go to sea, was why I joined the Navy. And I'd been in there in the Navy in schools and training for about a year. And I thought the war was going to be over before I ever see it. Well, I heard somebody say that somebody had volunteered for new construction, and he was gone in about a couple of days to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So I said, I think I'll go that route. I can't get out of here. So I asked a friend of mine to come with me, but he wouldn't go. He thought he'd stay there and go to sea quicker. Well, I went to Portsmouth. I and another California boy named Jim Elliott, and we went up to Portsmouth, and they welcomed us aboard the USS Sennet. So that's how I got on the Sennet.
Can you tell me what the USS Sennet is?
USS Sennet is a submarine, the SS-408. It was still building while I was up at Portsmouth. It was launched and in commission, but they were installing engines and different interior machinery and stuff, and so I stayed in the barracks for about a month. And it was about the 1st of September I went aboard and went to sea.
Of what year?
It was 1943, and we put it to the sea trials. You have to go pass certain tests before the Navy will accept it. And we took it out to sea every day and practiced with the destroyer, who dropped a few depth charges while we were submerged and let us see what depth charges were like. And I guess we burnt out one engine and had to go back in and replace it. And another time we hit the bottom somewhere and ruined the sound heads. They had to be replaced. Finally, about the end of September, we got everything working right, and the Navy accepted it, and we were ready to go to sea.
What was it like getting hit with those depth charges?
At the time, they were far enough away where they didn't do any damage or anything. They just made a loud noise, and we knew what depth charges sounded like, but they didn't do any harm.
They didn't try to ring your bell?
No. But we practiced with a destroyer. They fired their torpedo at us on the surface, and it was a direct hit right underneath our boat.
So, after you were done testing the submarine, where did you guys go?
We went from Portsmouth to New London, Connecticut, where some radar hadn't been installed. It was up on the dock, and the captain had him bring it aboard, and we would have it installed in Pearl Harbor when we got there. And from New London, we stopped at Hampton Roads, Virginia. The captain was from Virginia, and we stayed there overnight. And then we went down to Solomon Islands, Maryland, where we operated there with a scientist that they had installed a bathymeter that measured the water temperature at different depths. And his purpose was to read the cold layers of water way down there in case we got caught by a destroyer. It was going to depth charges. We'd get below that cold layer of water. It's also dense, much denser, and there's sound waves that they send down to find us that bounce off that cold water. And later on, it saved our lives. So we were glad to get that on board.
Yeah.
And from there, we went to the Panama Canal, went through the canal. I think we stayed overnight and took on torpedoes. And yes, we did. We took on torpedoes. We were over there a day or two doing that. Then we went from there to Pearl Harbor. We got the radar installed, and I don't remember going ashore. But anyway, we went from there to Midway Island, where the Goonie birds are. It's only about 15 feet above sea level. There's all white sand, and those albatross or Goonie birds, they do their dance, mating dance, and they lay their eggs right there in that hot sand, and they hatch.
Did they let you get off the submarine?
Oh yeah, we went up. They had stores up there, and we went, and I don't remember doing much else, but we took on some more torpedoes there, and from there, our first patrol was at the Bonin Islands. We had 2 other submarines with us, and we went up there. Pardon me. We went up there alone. It was another time we had 2 others with us. But we went up there. Japanese had some radar, a radar ship equipped with radar, and another escort vessel. And we went up there, and we had a load of newly developed sonic torpedoes. They're small, about 5 foot long, and they're electric, battery operated. And we went up there and tested those. And we run underneath those 2 vessels for about a week. And little torpedoes had a bug in them, and they wouldn't hit. And after about a week, one of them exploded. And when the captain stuck the periscope up, it had hit the escort. We wanted the other guy with the radar. The B-29s were flying over that island. It was right in the path to Japan. That's why we wanted to sink them. And So we went up on the surface and they manned the guns. I was in the after battery pushing shells up. And they're heavy, about 105 pounds in a casing. Push them up through a tube with a ramrod. And I had another little fellow helping me, and 2 cooks were in the magazine handing them up. And they all 3 wore out on me. That is a fact. I've been working in a brickyard. I was in good shape. I don't know if they ever worked, those others. But anyway, they went up there and sunk that fellow with gunfire.
So what was it like living in a submarine?
You get used to it, that's all I can tell you. You know, at first you think, oh my God, what I get into, you know. It's round like that. I-beams and all this stuff in there, you're not familiar with anything. You just get used to it a little at a time. You think nothing of it.
What was your sleeping quarters like?
In the after torpedo room where I slept, they had the torpedoes along the bulkhead and a bunk right over them. And I slept on the top bunk right over one of the torpedoes. And tell you something, I first got in there, I was sleeping with my feet towards the stern. But one night, early one morning, a boat went into a real steep dive. And I was head down, feet up, hanging on, and a couple of bombs went off. And oh boy, everybody was complaining about what a lousy dive, so steep, you know. And when those bombs went off, oh, what a good dive. Anyway, it was quite an experience.
So then you started sleeping the other way?
So that's right, I crawl in that little hole between the machinery and go in head first and sleep with my feet towards the bow, so that if I went into a steep dive, my feet would stop me. Because it was really hard to hang on to keep going head first into the bulkhead.
What about the food? What was the food like on the submarine?
Great. You couldn't complain, although some would complain about food. I don't care what it's like. I enjoyed the food. It was every day, once a day for supper, it was meat. You had those nice steaks of beef tenderloin and potatoes. We all had to get a turn and peel it. And they made French fries. And we had basic food. It was all good.
Did you ever have an occasion to get mail?
Not at sea. You go to sea on a patrol for about 2 months. When you come in, then you get your mail.
Did you receive mail while you were gone?
Yes, my mother wrote to me, and I had a girlfriend at the time. Once in a while, she'd write. But other than that, I didn't write to a lot of people.
Okay. How about care packages? Did your mom ever send you anything?
No, I don't remember ever. I don't think we had those kind of things at that time. I didn't know anybody that got them anyway.
Well, sometimes USO would send fruitcake during the holidays or that kind of stuff.
I don't remember any of that.
Okay. Then you did answer another question. You had a girlfriend at the time. But not Dorothy, so we won't talk about that.
She knows her. But we broke up, and I started going to Dorothy.
Okay. Was that before the war was over or after?
That was after the war.
2 months after we got home.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to the end. So can you tell me the story about when you guys had to go deep into the cold water?
Yeah, I forget what, but I think it was on our 3rd patrol that we fired, the captain did, he fired 6 torpedoes from the forward room directly at a destroyer, right off the coast of Japan. And he must have had his sound gear on and heard them coming, because he knew right where they were, and he went right down between them after us. We dove deep when he did turn to come after us, and we went down to 600 feet. And somebody told him, man at a control room where we're at 600 feet. Captain said, take it deeper. That was our tested pressure. And nothing gave way, so I don't know how deep we went. But the gauges quit reading at 600 feet. And we went deeper until the captain was satisfied, and that guy got right on top of us. And fortunately for us, he couldn't find us below that cold layer of water. So we got away. He made about 3 passes over us, and the last time he went over us, he dropped 1 depth charge and left.
Did you have to be really quiet when he was above so they couldn't hear you with their...
That's right. We all holding our breath. Believe me, that was a close call. That destroyer, if they find you down there, you're finished. And we got away with it. That bathymeter we took on did its job.
So you think he just dropped that depth charge for a Hail Mary just to see if you would hit anything?
I don't really know.
Yeah.
I just know that he dropped 1 depth charge and left.
Well, you didn't want to come home empty-handed. You had to do something that day. That's an exciting story. That's like from a movie.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of it would make a good story about the movies, in the movies.
So, did you have any other good stories like that where you had a close call or there was some action?
We were in a lot of actions, at night, and they fire on those ships. They usually have 2 or 3 escort vessels with them, and whatever they,
Tell about going into the Sea of Japan.
Well, I will.
Okay.
This is at the last patrol that we made.
Okay.
Before that, though, the Japanese fleet came out of their main base, Kure Naval Base in the sea, inland sea, between the southern and main island of Honshu. They came out one night, going down to Okinawa where our fleet was. And that night was the big night. I was sleeping in the after torpedo room. They came out just about dark, still light enough to our folks could see them. Full speed ahead and turned south towards Okinawa. And sometime during the night, I think it was 11 o'clock, they got me out of bed and said a lookout had gotten sick, that he wanted me to come up there and replace him. Of course, I grumbled like, why me, Well, they asked for me, so I went up there. When I went through all the way up there, nobody said a word. I thought that was kind of strange, but it's not unusual. Anyway, I got into the mess hall, was part of the after battery, and it was crowded with people. At 11 o'clock at night, when everybody was usually in bed, I thought something was strange. There was standing room only, so many were crowded in there. And as I got up to the galley, there's a passageway there, a gangway, and one of my friends stepped up and said the Japanese fleet came out. He was the lookout that had gotten sick from overexcitement. He said every kind of ship came out of there. Every ship they had. And Oh, I was disappointed. I missed seeing it, But that was his battle station, was a lookout up there. And I don't know what else he did on board, but he and I buddied up for some time. Whenever there was an action up there, he'd be up there and seen it all, and he'd come back and tell me. Anyway, I said I'd go on up and lookout, because I was up, I was going on lookout anyway. As I got into the control room, the chief petty officer was there, chief quartermaster, and nobody else, just us two, we two. And he started telling me that their fleet had come out, and I asked him, I remember what course we were on. He told me it wasn't 80 was south, and asked him our speed, full speed ahead, chasing them. And I said, "Who's on watch up there?" "Oh, what officer?" And he told me, "Mr. Roach." Oh, my heart just sank. I knew he wasn't a commander at a time like that. And I knew our officers quite well by that time. And the captain, he said, had gone to bed not to be disturbed at a time like that. And when I said, "What about the executive officer?" "Had gone to bed not to be disturbed." Here we were without a commander there in bed, chasing a Japanese fleet. Anyway, I don't know what to make out of all that, but it didn't look right to me. But I went up topside and went on lookout on the after conning tower deck. And I wasn't up there very long. I saw a strong, what I thought was a boat wake crossing our stern. I went up and reported it, and he said he'd seen that, but he thought it was fish. Oh God, my heart just sank. I knew fish don't do that. Mm-hmm. How he ever imagined that was fish. You don't see anything at night up there. It's so dark. You see nothing. That was the first time in all the time that I was out there that I had seen anything at night. I was just sure it was a boat wake. They'd sent a torpedo boat out there after us because we had the radio going constantly to our base telling them the Japanese fleet was on its way south. And they have directions finders, and they can find you out there. They know your range, bearing, everything. And they track you a while. They get your course, your speed, send a torpedo boat out, and that's all he needs to work his problem. Fire on you. So I knew you better do something quick, But I went back there, and then a stronger wake was over on the left or port side. And I was watching it. I'd already reported it. Wasn't any point in going back up there. And I was watching it, and while I was, the lookout up on the periscope shears reported it at 270 west in his sector. He again dismissed it as fish. Absurd. Fish don't do that. They even in the daytime, if you see a fish, it's unusual. We see whales all the time, dolphins, but no fish. And I knew this guy is, he's not the man for the job. But I went up and reported it again, and he again dismissed it as fish. Well, fortunately, another officer came up and relieved him. And he reported everything to him, and he said that the lookouts had reported boat wake, and Officer Mr. Andrews, his name, asked him where. He said 270 broadside, and then he went below. And I went back, I went up there and listened to what was going. And yeah, sure enough, he told him everything. Lookouts was reporting that. He said he didn't think so. It was fish. I knew it wasn't. They just don't do that. You'll see anything at night up here. So dark. And I went back there to the after conning tower deck. It was not very far. And I heard Mr. Andrews right full rudder. I went over there and looked. Here was that wavy line, about as wide as a highway. That was at the wake. And he'd seen it before, and he knew. And so we watched it until it got almost to us, and I couldn't see the bow. It's too dark up there. But I tried to judge if it was going to hit or not. And it looked for the world like it was going to hit. So I went to the other side and stood there and I just waited. I don't know what I thought, but I was scared to death. And because if it hit, it was sure death. And after several seconds, when I thought it, should have hit, it didn't. And I looked down, and I was looking right into the middle of it. It was all aglow. There's phosphorus in the water, and when it's stirred up at night, it glows. It was all lit up with phosphorus, going out into the night. I could hardly believe my eyes. But anyway, that was the experience I'd never forget. I can see it yet.
Did you ever find out if it was a boat wake and what it was?
The officers figured out it was a torpedo boat, and the wake, we all three verified it. The lookout up on the port side, me, the officer. I mean, you got three witnesses. And the other lookout on the starboard side, I couldn't remember who was up there. But we all agreed. And all described it exactly as the same.
What did it do, miss you? Then?
Huh?
What did it do, go under there and miss you?
Oh, it missed the bow. I talked to the portside lookout, Francis Smith, who I knew very well. He's from Lincoln, Nebraska. And he told me he had a better view of it up there, a better perspective, and he could see that it missed the bow. And we ran over the wake. So in that few seconds, I looked down and there it was right underneath of us. I thought it ran underneath of us. He said, no, it missed the bow. And I found out since a torpedo runs 30 yards ahead of its wake. So by the time I thought it was going to hit, it already missed. And we ran over the wake, and in that few seconds it was right under where I was standing, and I was looking right down into it.
Wow.
And it was already going out into the dark, probably half a mile in there somewhere. And Mr. Andrews ordered clear the bridge, and we all cleared the bridge and dove the boat. And the captain and the executive officer both got out of bed, came wondered why we dove, because we had violated the captain's order to stay on the surface, full speed ahead, and keep that radio going. But Mr. Andrews told him he ordered it to dive. He asked him why. He said a torpedo, and that seemed to satisfy everybody. And anyway.
Till about the time you got trapped up.
Oh, that was in training up there at Portsmouth.
Oh.
I and two other lookouts were up there, and another fellow. There was There was three of us up there, and the captain thought he'd order everybody below, and he hadn't ordered us below, the lookouts. And he went below and closed the hatch. And the air started going out through the vents, and his boat was settling down. And just as it got down to the water level, it came back up. But those other, one fella couldn't swim. Oh, he was going crazy.
That's why I was wondering what would happen if they ever forgot somebody up there and just dove.
I don't know, he might drown, you know. Fortunately, I'd been looking down the hatch. I was up on the shears looking down the conning tower hatch, and a friend of mine was on, the quartermaster was there. He keeps records. And he reminded the captain that he hadn't brought the lookouts down. So he ordered surface and he came back up. And we went down. Yeah, that was a... But I never got caught up there again. If I heard a vent crack back there, you know, they make a noise and you could hear the air come out, make a beeline for that hatch. One time, an aircraft off the Japanese coast came right over the top of us, where I was standing. I'm looking up there, and you know, they're only there a second or two, and I made a beeline for that hatch, and I reported aircraft. And had a new officer up there, and he was inexperienced, and the captain's order, standing order, to dive that boat for aircraft, because we don't have any defense against them, they fly too fast. He didn't order the boat to dive. I was down there on the bow planes. They're supposed to rig them out and get ready to dive. And the chief kept hollering at me to go up and call the captain. Well, I didn't know what to do because you're supposed to follow the first order given, and it was a standing order. The first lookout down rigs the bow planes out. He hollered again, and so I finally gave in, went up. The captain heard that, and he came running. And they sure straightened that officer out up there for not diving the boat. And anyway, that's one experience I had.
Can you tell me the story about the Sea of Japan?
Well, it was the last patrol we made, and I think it was in the book, a history book I have on that. It was June and July. And we went in there with a mine detector. We had to go through the southern channel into there, and it was a mine channel. But we had a newly developed mine detector, and that's how we got through that minefield in the channel. It took, I think, 13 hours submerged through that channel. There was a 21-mile-an-hour current, or 19-mile-an-hour, I forget which. 19 knots. That's 21 miles. But I went to bed, and the others, a lot of them stayed up all night. They couldn't sleep, couldn't go to bed. So I went back and went to bed. I said, you can't do nothing. If you hit one of those mines, it's over. We got through there, and while we were going through there, they kept waking me up. Wanted me to go up there and look in the conning tower at a screen they had up there. Those mines show up as little spots of light, and they steer away from them and go through those spots. Had an officer there giving the course, and so that's how we got through that mine channel. And I went up to look at that screen. It wasn't a whole lot much to look at or anything. But I did it so they'd let me alone. I was trying to sleep, you know. And I got back there, huh?
Why did you go in there? To the
By the end of the war there, we had submarines and the Air Force had sunk most of their merchant fleet. About the only shipping they had left was in the Sea of Japan from the mainland. Peninsula of Korea is right there. And they were bringing, one thing, they were bringing stuff from Russia there. It was supposed to be our ally, but they were neutral. And we got in there, we saw one of their tankers all lit up and running lights and identification lights, and they identified it as a Russian tanker carrying oil to Japan. And so we informed our people of that, and they bombed their refineries. That has to be refined before they could use it. And the last air raid of the war was on a refinery. So we cut their oil off. They can't run their machines without it. And that was their last mission, was to bomb that refinery. And anyway, while we were in there, that's why we went in there, to sink their shipping. And we had to let that one go. It was a neutral ship. But we sank several others in there. Two of them, in the daytime, they came around a mountain, we call it, it's in there. I was at night, those hills in Japan just rise right up out of the ocean. It looked like it rises straight up. And call them mountains, I don't know, they're more like the Hawaiian Islands, I think. They're volcanic islands. And anyway, we sank about 2 different ones in there. And one night we met a convoy. It was making up at the rendezvous point. First one ship, and then there were 7 more, a total of 8, had showed up. The captain said, "No use waiting any longer, that's all we can handle." So they made their attack. And I heard this, I was in the after torpedo room, I could hear them exploding when they hit. You never know if they sank. Sometimes they don't. But they hit 7 of them. I heard the torpedoes explode, but one got away because 2 of them went different directions. We couldn't chase both of them. We chased one of them, hit him, and a total of 7 out of 8, which is pretty good at that time of the war. But that was the last convoy attack in World War II. It's in the history book. That's how I know it. And anyway, we'd fired most of our torpedoes by the time we had 1 left, I think. We like to take 1 back in with us just in case something gets after us. We had to go out through the northern channel. And in case we couldn't get out, we were put into a port in Russia. It's up there at where that channel starts. I forget the name of the city now, but I have to look up on the map again. But anyway, we didn't get hit. Oops, what was that?
Your glasses.
Oh, hold on, please. Anyway, we got out through that channel. It took an hour and a half. When we surfaced that morning, there was fog so dense, couldn't see the bow. We were supposed to go out at night, but the captain said, "Lighten the boat all we can and we'll go now. If that fog will hold out, we'll be out of here." So that's what we did. And it took an hour and a half to get through that channel, the Peru Straits up there. It's between some islands north of Japan. And we got through there without a hitch. There were 2 other boats in there with us. And so we waited around till that night, and the Piper radioed that they were out about 10 o'clock at night. So we started home, and they said they'd wait for the barb to come out. And they got out okay too. I think it was at the last of the war there. Japan's fleet had been sunk down there in Okinawa on the previous patrol. And I don't think they had anything left. But I don't know that, but we didn't see any. We got out of there and went through the Kuril Islands. It's real dense fog and cold wind up there. And that's where they made up their fleet that they hit Pearl Harbor with. Snuck it up the northern route where they weren't seen. And we went right through those islands in the daytime. I about froze my face up there. Anyway, we got out of Japan, seeing Japan about, I think, 5 days. And it dropped the first atomic bomb. And it was August 5th, I think. Anyway, at first we didn't know whether to believe it or not. There's so many windy guys on there, some they might be lying. So we just waited and see. And about a week later, they dropped another one on Nagasaki, in the inland sea there. By that time, we were all pretty well convinced that it was real. And we all had a feeling if it was real, and I'm pretty sure it was, the war would have to end. They couldn't stand up to that. So we got back into Saipan, and sure enough, it was real, all right. And we got a couple of weeks at a rest camp on Guam. They flew us over there. And while I was in the rest camp in Guam, we were in there about 8 days. The news came about, we'd just gone to bed that night, about 10 o'clock, lights out. Men came parading through the barracks there. The war's over. That's how it ended for me. And about a couple of days later, we got called back to the boat. And wasn't long, the captain said we're going to Midway Island. And so we did go back to Midway, and we were not there much. Long I saw a friend of mine I'd gone to junior high school with. He was on the Kingfish, tied up right next to us. He was going back to New London. Oh, he was all excited. So it was the next day he was leaving. We got word we were going to Galveston, Texas. So I told Jack we were going. While we were at sea, we stopped at Pearl Harbor overnight and went from there and to Panama. We got word we were going to New London. They'd changed our orders. So we went through the canal there and up to New London, and I went home and leave. And about half the crew, the other half of the crew, I was in one half, half of them stayed aboard, went home. My friends that I had made in there, a lot of them went home, and I didn't even know it until they got back from leave. And they'd been discharged. So that's how it all ended.
So what did you do after the war then?
Well, I stayed aboard the Sennet, and we didn't do much of anything. We tied up to the dock most of the winter. We'd take it out on exercises once in a while, but mostly we'd be in dock at night. And it's tied up all winter. Got liberty.
Tell why you decided to.
Yeah.
Tell why you decided to get off. Yeah.
Oh, there's some that you don't get along with on there.
No. Tell about where it was going.
Huh?
Tell about where it was going to go.
Oh, the boat. I did my time, and I was about to get discharged. And the boat was going down to Antarctica. It was Admiral Byrd was taking an expedition down there. Well, my time was up, or about. They came through the boat and asked if we wanted to go. And I told them, no, I'm going home. I mean, I didn't want any more ice. I had enough ice, bad weather. So. And I thought, there's nothing down there but a bunch of icebergs. And I was right. So I got discharged about a week later. I got terminal leave. The Congress voted to give us terminal leave. We leave that we didn't get during the war. No leaves were granted. They let us have terminal leave at the end of our hitch, and we could go home.
And what year was that?
46. And I went home about middle of November in 46. And my discharge came on January the 1st.
His sister and I were best friends in junior high and then into high school.
Yeah, that's how we met.
We had it all figured out that he was going to be going with someone else. We figured out this girl that he'd be good for.
They're going to set me up.
Ahead of time.
Yeah, but it wasn't me. It was going to be somebody else.
That was my sister. She was my kid sister.
She and I decided he would really like this Shirley.
But anyway, that's the way things worked out.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't discuss during the interview?
Well,
Did we forget anything?
I don't know.
I can't think.
I think I've hit the highlights.